We're live. Everybody, thank you very much for coming by tonight. End of season, a history of Book of Enoch. We have got Dave tonight, who has a rough idea what we're going on. Chris and Artie, I don't think have any idea what the hell they've got themselves involved for, but they're here anyway. We're going to go with that. So everybody knows who I am because I've invited everybody here. Richard, do you want to give a wee synopsis of what we found from the Book of Enoch or what you drew from it?
Nope.
No, fuck you then. Alien overlords.
At least we can trust you to be sincere.
Yeah. I don't know. I just see it all as being very, very repetitive. And, I mean, a lot of Christians wouldn't be aware the Book of Enoch is older than their Bible. And to see things in the Bible from the Book of Enoch is no surprise whatsoever. I think perhaps some of the best things in the Book of Enoch were the 14 non-deciduous trees. Let's see, what else? No, that's really about it. The 14 non-deciduous trees, I think, is the most provable, disprovable thing in the entirety of the book.
I think the eucalyptus tree is very important to you or something like that, isn't it? That's the confirmation for you.
Yeah, we decided to skip over that part. It got really repetitive.
It did.
It just kept going, saying the same thing again and again and again. There's a definition of a tree that Enoch claims to be in close proximity to, and for me, it doesn't matter whether he actually saw it himself, experienced it himself, or someone told the story. Some 3,500 years ago, 3,200 years ago, something like that. It wasn't possible for him to have gone to Australia and surrounding islands to have experienced it himself with the technology that they had at the time. So either way, somebody had been there. The description of the tree doesn't allow it to be something besides a eucalyptus tree, one of those English words. Specifically because now you're going to make me do it wrong on purpose. Specifically because the fruit and its shape and how it grows upward toward the sky in clusters, something like grapes, and it's really the only tree on the planet that does that. So I think there's no mistake in it. Although we skipped that part.
Sorry, can I ask? And sorry to come in here, and you've probably already covered this. How does it describe the eucalyptus tree?
It's pungent in odor. As he approaches it, it penetrates him to the bone. He says there's fruit that grows upward, but like grapes, but pointing up, like not hanging down.
That's not a eucalyptus tree.
What do you got?
Well,
Wait,
hang on. American eucalyptus do fruit like that.
No, the American eucalyptus in California came from Australia. They were imported in the late 17, early 1800s.
Okay, then the eucalyptus trees that were growing on my street were not from Australia, because the ones that were growing on my street had fruited upright. I'm not making any claims otherwise. All I know is that the eucalyptus trees that were growing on my street and outside of Los Angeles, where I live there, fruited upright. And when I lived there, that was a uniquely fascinating trait, and probably the only thing I remember about them until one of them had been cut down while I was away, and the whole fucking neighborhood smelled like eucalyptus. It was amazing. But yeah, the only other thing I remember about those trees was that they fruited upright.
Yeah.
So not all of them are
it might be a hybrid of some sort then, but the Australian eucalyptus definitely does not fruit.
There are something like 700 eucalypts. So
how does the Australian eucalyptus seed?
How does it seed? It burns.
So
it burns. It drops the nut. It burns and it releases.
Where are the seeds located?
In the tree itself.
On the fruit.
No, it's not a fruit. It's not a fruit. I can take you out and show you a eucalyptus tree right now.
Then what's growing from the end of the clusters?
There is no clusters. There's nuts. There's like nuts.
Nuts.
What do the nuts
are inside the tree itself.
But the
and
nut,
when it burns, it releases them and they open.
So the whole thing's like a pine cone.
I don't really know much about pine cones, but
pine cones do that. Pine cones do that. They keep the seed buried, and then when there's heat release, the cone will open and drop seed.
I think it's more like a hickory nut.
Oh, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, no,
I know eucalyptus because I live in Australia and I'm surrounded by bush. So
Well, that's a pine
hickory
cone.
nut or a pig nut.
That's a pine
Because,
cone.
those are in the same family.
I have a pine cone.
Just keep giving tree names that the other one of you doesn't know about.
Yeah, if the seed has to be released from something, the thing it's being released from is either a flower or a fruit.
okay, well it's not a visible fruit. I'll put it that way.
I'm with you.
Richard's description of what he thinks a eucalyptus tree is probably a hybrid. The original Australian one, I think Chris is trying to put across, does not look like that.
I'm willing to believe Chris.
I am too. I'm just saying. My position is that not all eucalypts come from Australia.
I
and
just-
they certainly don't all.
Now, is
It was
that
hilarious that
eucalypti
you.
or eucalyptuses
Eucalyptum?
or eucalyptum. Okay.
Eucalypts.
Chris, have you any other questions for Richard apart from what the tree is?
I'll leave that alone. I just wanted to clarify that. I just wanted to.
Well, seeing as you're new here, Chris, have you anything that you would like to ask Richard to get a rough idea of what he believes? You said you had a wee bit of background in this.
Oh, as far as ancient aliens, yeah, I used to research the hell out of it.
Cool.
Prior to my sad conversion to Christianity, before my dear conversion to Christianity, I was very much into ufology. Von Daniken, I've read Chariots of the Gods about 1 million times, and basically grew up with that. So I've got actually my introduction to the Bible was through studying ancient aliens.
What do you think of Zachariah Sitchin, since you have that background?
I know the name and I just can't.
He's the guy
So
that.
you were never a fan, anyway.
I'm just trying to. I know
Stitchin's
name,
the
I
guy
can't
with the
find it.
Anunnaki. He mistranslated some of the tablets for the Anunnaki and come up with the idea that they were aliens. They came from the 10th planet. They were down here to harvest gold for their.
Oh, yeah, no.
I love the sour face.
Yeah.
It's like it's like when people want to talk about flat Earth, and I'm like, oh god, I live in Indiana in the United States, and almost nothing good has come from the state except for the Indianapolis 500.
I love the way
Oh,
Chris has
okay.
Chris has an assistant.
So that's where the seeds dropped from, is what you just showed us there.
Yeah, well, that's what's kind of been pulled off a tree. So
Yeah.
Wait a
Because it's
minute.
hanging in your back window right
You-
there, which is
do you
if
have
someone
an
did that for you.
assistant? Do you have an assistant that's gone outside and grabbed you something from your
No, he's got hands that can float off of his body just like Dave.
look, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
Perfect. That was
I thought the hand looked a little gray.
great timing.
I love Georgios. I love him. Absolutely love him. I love his Centauri haircut. So
Nice use of the word Centauri.
Yeah, you're a Babylon 5 fan. We'll not hold it against you.
That's not even where I know that fucking word from.
That's where it came from.
No,
Oh.
it's not. It's not.
yeah, sorry, no, I didn't mean to distract the whole thing with the eucalyptus thing. It was just.
Oh no, it's poignant.
The other thing I was going to say about what I know are similar between the eucalyptus on my street in LA and the ones in Australia is that they are flammable as fuck. Like a dead
Oil.
pine tree, they're flammable as fuck.
Yeah.
Super oily.
Yeah, so what actually happened was back in, and I know this because my actual area of study is Australian history. I'm an Australian historian. And what happened, it was in the late early 1800s, some visitors from America thought these look really nice and took them over and planted them in California. And as a result, that's where the Californian eucalypt comes from. So it's so the reason that California has the bad fires the same as Australia does is because of this native invasive tree that's come from Australia. So, sorry about we gave you eucalypt and can hand.
So that you know, the eucalyptus in California aren't an invasive species, and the shit that's burning in California doesn't have anything to do with eucalyptus.
But next year there's a plan to import the brown snake into California from Australia. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, you should do that.
What's
Yeah,
that?
you should do that.
Yeah,
What's that for? We trying to kill rabbits?
wipe people out. That's what that
The brown
shit's
snake
for.
will kill everything.
It didn't kill the Australian rabbits, so
No, that was disease.
Yeah, exactly. And that was introduced by humans, even, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think we culled the rabbit population by about 90%.
Yeah, that was among the first ecological disasters that I was aware of. Like, aside from, like, trust me, I live in the United States. I've seen ecological disaster. That was the first one that I was aware of that was the result of just oblivious fucking endeavor. We're going to do this thing because we want to hunt rabbits. So I'm going to bring 15 of them to hunt.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And then they eviscerate the landscape for 150-ish years until humans again say, okay, we fucked up. Actually, it's not our fault. It's that fucker's fault. But we're going to fix it with a disease.
Oh, the amount of invasive species and plants that were brought into Australia by the Europeans, it completely changed the balance.
It's funny that the most of what came from the United States to Europe wasn't. Almost none of them were aggressive species. But what the United States has taken from other countries, I'm guessing that's not the case, but does Australia suffer from kudzu?
I was about to bring up kudzu. Yeah.
It's
crazy.
It's a ground cover from Asia that was meant to stabilize cuts that the highway department's made in mountains and hills, because it'll grow on fucking anything, and it will stabilize anything because it's got a deep root system, but it will also climb and grow over everything.
Okay, no, we don't have.
So they climb trees, fill the canopy, and
Kill the tree.
Forest floor.
Yep.
Okay. No, we don't have that. We've got. I think we learnt our lesson early. Obviously, with the rabbits, the cane toads. Cane toads in Queensland, they're just insanely a pest.
Did cane toads come from like Haiti or something?
Africa, South Africa.
Did they?
Yeah. Patterson's curse, which is someone brought over thinking it would be a nice thing to plant, and it was plants very nice in England, but becomes an obnoxious weed in Australia. So different ecologies.
So,
one of the things I love most about reading English authors talking about the United States, especially horticulturally, because I was a fucking landscaper for 25 years, is how aggressive nature is in the United States versus virtually the rest of the world outside of...
I've just realised that I've completely thrown, and I apologise for this, MathPig. I've completely thrown the conversation from ancient aliens.
Aliens!
And I'm going to be honest. I have no expertise in horticulture apart from the eucalyptus in my backyard. I'm going to shut up now because it's 8 o'clock in the morning here, and I'm just excited to be talking to people.
Arithmetic sworn, and I apologize.
Oh man, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
That is the thing that I know. So we can stop there. Let's
Oh.
go back to...
Well, I want to welcome Manda for joining us. Manda, thanks very much for coming in.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight?
Mama, you and I haven't seen you
Why
in
do you hate us?
2 years.
Dave, I know you've been...
Wait. You want to talk about invasive species? In New York City, the starling that they introduced in the late 19th century, just as I don't want to say a lark, but they did it as a tribute to Shakespeare, and never been in North America at all before. Brought them over from the UK, and they pretty much took over all of Central Park. It's really, really bad. And other invasives in Australia, you have there's a fungi that's grown on certain citrus. I can't remember what kind. There's a citrus tree that the fungi is grown on, and they had to actually burn it away in order to get rid of it because it was completely killing off some of the citrus plants in Australia. So
White mildew, and it grew on
Citrus.
and my making noise?
No,
that was me.
no, that was him.
It was me trying to. That's my thinking noise.
Oh, okay.
Very similar to his passing gas noise, but yes.
No, that comes from a completely different orifice.
Yeah, we can't tell through a single mono mic though.
You can, because the other orifice is nowhere near the mic.
Oh, good.
And so if it comes from the other orifice, it's going to come with a certain muffle. You'll notice the difference.
Okay.
So glad I
Okay,
popped
cool.
in here for this.
Richard, I'm looking down through the wee list of stuff that we wrote as it went along. Now, I know you haven't had any
Yeah.
chance to look anything up, but going through it, considering now that we have Mama here, a wee bit of a scientist, you were saying that there is actually heavy metals was being shot off the sun.
More than wee bit, Mama Atheist, a scientist. Yeah, NASA has several different cameras looking at ionized particles coming off of the sun, and everyone's aware of that. I guess it could be just a matter of opinion, and I don't have anything really to back that up. It just seems to me that we have very, very clear pictures from heavy metals ionized coming off of the sun. And it seems like there's a lot coming off of it. The clarity of the pictures are quite good.
How can it be clear and you not have any reason?
Well,
Yeah.
I said I don't have a lot of scientific backing to back my opinion on it. That it seems too much to me.
That's the issue, Richard. Every time is that you come at me with opinions. You don't come to me with facts like we had with the asteroid debate. You can't say to somebody that's a background answer. Well, this is my opinion, but have no data to support it, no facts at all.
Me.
Well, I don't know that we have an estimate of the materials coming off of the sun.
You'd be able to calculate and measure exactly what was hitting the Earth.
Again, I studied astrophysics. I was with a solar physicist for many, many years.
Yeah.
We know exactly what the sun is made out of. So, there's-
Well,
And emitting, and what comes to the Earth from the sun.
okay. So what's it emitting?
it's like 75% hydrogen, first of all. So, it's a ball of gas. It's not emitting.
Mostly radiation, and I'm not aware of any metals that are
No metals. No.
being emitted.
So there's no camera at NASA looking at ionized iron coming off of the sun, which shows up red in that picture. That doesn't exist.
There is a tiny amount of iron.
Is there?
Okay, what's the
It's
tiny
tiny
amount?
amount.
Are we talking about compared to the mass of the sun in
Well,
total? Is that what you mean by tiny?
Is there a problem with ionized iron?
No, it's the very reason why we have the long process in stars where particles are bouncing around inside for a very long time, because it's obvious the sun has not gone supernova and yet is producing these metals.
Well, it's like,
Is ionized iron a problem?
Well, for something that hasn't gone nova or supernova, it should be a little bit rare.
no,
Yeah.
less than
Well, how do we
0.5%.
know? Only in the sense that it could have been there all along.
Admittedly,
No reason to assume
I'm literally asking questions out of ignorance. Is that a problem?
Well, if you go to NOAA, that NOAA, it's a scientific site. We have several different cameras looking at the sun, and it's looking at ionized particles, and it doesn't just look at hydrogen and helium.
Okay.
I was trying to say, like, less than 0.5% of what makes up the sun is some metals like iron and I think Dave, I don't remember exactly what they were. Silicon, iron,
Sodium something or other. Sodium sulfate.
lithium, but most of it, hydrogen makes up most of the sun. It's almost all gases. I don't know where you're getting this ionized metal thing from.
Well, if you went to NOAA.
No, wait.
If you went and
Richard, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you again. Is ionized iron from the sun problematic.
This is probably my fault because we made the list of questions to ask Richard and didn't fucking write context of why we come up with this question, which probably would have helped.
So it's not a problem unless it's producing more than we would expect it to produce from the long. Now I'm getting stuck.
It's all right.
From the long they call it the quote unquote long process.
Sure, the ancient age. I'm with you. The what do they call it? Deep, whatever. But is it a problem?
I can't even remember. Like MathPig just pointed. I can't even remember why this came up in conversation right now.
Hang on, just a second. Let me put this a different way, because I apparently I do have a specific version of the question that I'm intending to elicit a response to, and I apologize for not making it more clear. Do you feel that ionized metals coming from the sun have an effect on you?
No.
I think the context, if I remember correctly, was something was said in the Book of Enoch that Richard used this as an explanation to explain it, to tie it into his narrative, his story, and we wrote it down to have, why.
Does the Book of Enoch tell us something about ionized metals being emitted from the sun?
All of these came from us, the series that we just did. All these questions, all these things that we were to ask Richard. And saying that he was supposed to get this the other day to get a chance to look all this up. But, yeah.
I haven't looked at I'd love to look it all up and cite my sources and stuff. That'd be great. I think it's going to come down to...
Are you talking about the aurora and solar storms and stuff like that? Is that what?
Well, actually, yes. That's probably what I was about to say. That's probably what the original topic was. That I think when it says an evil spirit was put.
Yeah. No.
No what?
No, there's no evil spirit. It's
What are you attributing a spirit?
It's colloquial language. It's not an evil spirit.
You literally just.
I'm quoting a text and then trying to give what I think is the correct translation of the text.
Colloquially.
So, but first I have to quote the text.
But what does that describe colloquially?
So I think Saul is referring to the sun in the war scene of David and Goliath. Okay. And there's solar ejecta, which we would see as being a bad thing if it heads this way.
Which you couldn't see.
No,
yes.
Have solar storms.
We're all aware of that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just suggesting that there was nobody in the Bible that saw ejecta.
It's not talking about a history lesson. We've all disproven it as history, I think.
Richard believes that the Bible and Enoch and things like this are prophetic. To give Artie and Chris some background.
And I apologize. I don't know you as well as I apparently should.
You're fine, bro.
I don't want to interrupt.
Just doing a quick synopsis. The Bible and the Book of Enoch and things like that. Correct me if anything I say is wrong, Richard. I'm just going to try and summarize it for the two of them. Is prophetic, as in it is to happen, but has happened before on a previous planet, previous Earth. The story of Jesus is more of a job than it is a person, and it's the God is an alien, and I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just trying to say God's an alien. He has a big spaceship. He goes from planet to planet, recreating this story, bringing life to the planet, bringing all of this. And when we read the Book of Enoch and it describes the end times, Richard's interpretation is of what the end times that has happened and will happen here. And it's a description of the aliens coming down, introducing themselves to us, and then taking us away in their spaceship along with water and a lot of our metals and elements that we have here on Earth.
So
that was a lot. I mean, that was pretty good, but that was a lot.
Can we boil it down to the Mormon Star Trek God?
I don't know anything about the Mormon Star Trek God.
Really Mormonistic.
I don't know that story. You'll forgive me.
Well, it's pretty Mormon.
Okay.
According to Mormonism, every inhabited planet, every intelligently inhabited planet has a god.
Yeah, but the Mormons also believe that they become gods over planets as long as you're an adult white male.
That's exactly that would be in addition to what I had said was that, and those gods used to be practicing Mormons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That would be part. Yeah, a little bit of tribalism there, but yeah. Okay.
Weird that a religion would have any portion of that.
Who'da thunk? to expound a little bit on any little tiny gaps that I think Math did a pretty good job, I think. I'm not saying that what I think the text is saying has to be a fact just because I'm personally convinced of it. Okay? That is what it's saying. Okay? But if I compared it to the normal view of religions involving a lot of magic and mysticism and miracles, and I don't see those described in the text, but they're all plausible in reality, I think it's at least a more realistic view.
Okay, so why? So when and I apologise if this.
No, jump in, Chris. Jump in. Go. Ask your questions. Find out what you need to.
So you're mentioning that you. So essentially, you believe that it's. I guess this stuff's happened on another Earth. Why in particular the Hebrew text then? Why not?
Oh no, it's just I'm usually talking to Christians.
We are hoping to.
You're always here.
Because
you're always talking to us.
Okay, because
yes, but you're referring
to
talks that I've had in the past where I was talking to people who were raised in Christian societies and know the Bible best, and that would make it look like I only am talking about the Bible. I'm not talking about just the Bible.
I was going to get to a point here. So would you say that it's the same thing for the Epic of Gilgamesh? Because a lot of the Old Testament of the Bible is based off. Okay, but we've actually got archaeological evidence that Gilgamesh existed.
Well, that's fine. They used real characters in the Bible too.
But we don't actually have the evidence that those characters in the Bible existed.
None of them?
Not none of them, obviously.
I said some.
But
I did say some.
For instance, Abraham, Noah. There's
sure.
no evidence that they existed. But then the story of Noah, for instance, is based off the Epic of Gilgamesh, which we do have evidence of.
Right. That's fine.
Yeah, but the Epic of Gilgamesh we're hoping to go through next week. Richard believes that all the ancient stories, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and maybe I think Sammy mentioned one about an old Aboriginal story that came from Australia, and the whole idea of the series being called The History Of is us going through these ancient stories and Richard explaining how his narrative fits into these ancient stories, or how these ancient stories from his point of view would actually be a description of what is to happen and what has happened before. So he's not...
all saying the same thing as well.
Yeah.
That's a bold fucking claim.
More the point I'm making is that the Hebrew Bible, if you were to claim that that's aliens happened on another planet, it doesn't account for the fact that it's essentially copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which we have archaeological evidence actually happened on this planet.
Why is that a problem?
Why is it a problem?
Yes, what you're pointing out, why is it a problem?
The exact same story happened on another planet and just happened to be copied almost word for word by the Hebrews.
What I'd be saying is that the Epic of Gilgamesh is also another story where an end of an earth is recalled as a past event, because it was, to an ancient people in a prophetic way that will happen to their people as well. It's still fine. I have no problem with it.
Gilgamesh doesn't end with the end of the planet. Neither does the Noah story, obviously.
Yeah. Well, that depends on how you're reading it.
Well, what level of destruction are you talking about? That's obviously a matter of perspective.
Okay, it's a matter of perspective.
Well, then it makes it a little more subjective, then, doesn't it?
The reason that I'm saying this, and I think it's accurate and not just my opinion, is because of its universality and its repetitiveness throughout the stories.
But it's not demonstrable. You're just asserting it.
Some parts of it are prophetic and not demonstrable, but of course you wouldn't expect me to produce evidence for something that hasn't happened. That's fair, right?
I would expect that there would be evidence of something that had happened, especially the significance that you're describing.
I don't know what you're saying did happen here that I'm saying didn't happen here yet.
No,
I'd like to learn that.
I didn't say anything about here.
Why would you expect evidence of something that didn't happen here?
Well, it happened somewhere.
Yes, and from what I can tell, it happened on another Earth-like planet.
From what you can tell, what is that? What are you looking at to establish what you can tell?
Well, some things are extremely unlikely, I admit, but plausible, that are described in some of these stories. that do appear to align to what I can tell of reality.
Could you be specific?
I wrote a paper with 40 falsifiable items in it for Dr.
Can you be specific to me right now?
Sure.
I don't mean to be dismissive. I'm just.
No, you're okay, Artemis.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, you and I have had conversations about some other stuff that didn't involve any of this, and then
Right.
I'm hoping you recall that I feel like we're friends. This is just a thing that I've not been confronted with.
Dude, I'm not going to cry later. Go ahead.
If you need me to hold you, I will give you a hug.
E-hug. Here's an e-hug for you. There you go.
My concern is that you're asserting things that no evidence exists to defend. That's because what I'm looking at, the way I'm seeing what you're describing, there is no way for you to defend that's true.
That's fine. You can hold that.
Well, if you have a way to defend it, that I can.
I'm all these as well.
Yeah, if you've got a way to say this is what I think and this is why, and you should think so too, I'm all about it.
Okay.
So, what is that? If you don't, fine, I'm not mad at you. I'm just asking.
I appreciate you not being mad at me for being extremely biased and flawed like humans can be. Thank you. And yes, of course I'm biased. I have to be. I don't have a choice about it. Things that would support what I'm saying. In Greek mythology, which I don't think should be called mythology, I think that's offensive, is the fifth character out from Zeus is held captive by Zeus.
What? Hang on.
And
what is the fifth character out? Is that a family lineage?
I'm glad you're excited. I'd love to tell you.
Richard, Chris is on the edge of his seat, muted, sitting back. He's ready to go, man. Go.
My balls are so deep. They're like right behind my belly button right now.
Sweet. That's awesome. But if we could do this slowly and logically, one step at a time, that would be easier.
It tickle my taint just a little bit.
Right on. E-tickle. There you go. All right. So the fifth character out, his name is Angus.
And he's called the fifth character out because
he's physically the fifth character away from. If you read all the stories, you'd find that the Cyclops Angus is the fifth character out, and he's a blacksmith.
So okay.
He's got a forge and stuff, and
fifth character out of a place
away from Zeus, but held captive by Zeus.
So he's not a family member?
No.
I mean,
he's a Cyclops.
He's a Cyclops.
Zeus is not a Cyclops.
Okay. I apologize. Am I the only one that doesn't understand the fifth character out thing?
I'm trying to work out how we got here from where we were at.
I'm going to tie it back. Promise.
Okay.
If I'm the only person that doesn't understand what fifth character out means...
You're not supposed to yet.
Okay.
Well, shit, if you'd have told me that from the beginning.
I did.
Oh, did you?
I said, here, let me say some crazy crap. Ain't going to make no sense until I
didn't.
wrap it up.
Okay, but I'm going to use terms you won't understand.
Right, go, Richard. Go. You have 5 minutes. Go.
Fifth character out.
Okay. And you've got Hercules, who looses, and I mix up these two names in different religions. You'll forgive me. Is it Hermes or Apollo with Zeus?
Apollo.
It's Apollo. Okay, thanks. So he looses Apollo, and Apollo goes out to the giant Cyclops, and he frees the beautiful woman who is captured by the Cyclops. The Cyclops has her in chains. Okay? So she's not directly chained to Zeus, she's chained to the Cyclops, who's chained to Zeus. Okay? And his name is Angus. And the word Angus literally means brightness. Okay? And when in that Greek, I guess.
Latin.
Okay.
It's all in Greek. So he's named Angus, and he's the 5th one out. And
Richard, I'm lost now, and
shoot,
I
which
hang
one
about
did
with
you-
you a lot, and I'm lost. Can you round it up? I'm lost.
yeah, I'm trying.
I thought Zeus was a Roman.
No, it's Jupiter.
Hercules looses, runs out, frees the beautiful woman, slays the Cyclops Angus, whose name means brightness, and he becomes the quote unquote brightness of Zeus's lightning bolt, Zeus's power. Okay, got it.
Yes, and
Now I'm gonna associate it.
I'm going back through all of my shit, realizing that no, Zeus is Greek, so it's Hera,
Right.
Poseidon, Cronus,
Right.
Aphrodite, Hades, Hephaestus. Gotcha.
Right. Okay. Okay. Going out from the sun, you have a very fast, small planet, right? Which is why we named it Mercury, by the way. That's why. And the 5th planet out is Jupiter, that has a big red eye, right? Cyclops, and he's flammable. And his
Okay, so yeah,
the name go ahead.
Jupiter is actually the Romanized version of Zeus, and Mercury is the Romanized version of Hermes.
Right. Do they have different stories in different cultures? Yes.
No, they're both.
Well, there's actually the Roman and the Greek pantheons are virtually similar,
They're
just
both.
slightly regionally different and different names.
They're both messenger of the gods.
Yeah, the closest one is a messenger. That's right.
Yeah,
Always. Right. Which would represent Mercury, which would represent David and Goliath, and that's how I'm tying it back.
I think Mercury is named Mercury because of its proximity to.
Let him tie it back. Let him tie it back, Artie.
The Roman god Mercury, whose name is it's named after the Roman god Mercury, who is Hermes in the Greek pantheon.
Here's the thing that I'm sure of is that if we sat around a campfire and we had enough,
And everybody was really high.
we had enough pot and
This would be a
booze
great talk.
for everybody to be happy, this would be
Yeah, I'm telling you, man.
fucking entertaining.
It would be, but no, it's and Jupiter is Zeus, the largest. It's Jupiter's the Romanized version of Zeus, so it's not the Cyclops.
Right.
Yes.
Right. In
And the
that
cloud
story
of-
and the way people have been reading it, you are accurate.
Eddie Izzard, I think, had a lot to say about the difference between the Greek gods and the Roman gods.
Okay, I don't know who he is.
You don't know who Eddie Izzard is? I
Committee, yeah.
Okay, that's
That'll be another tangent. That'll be another tangent. I know Chris is down to ask Richard a few things, so go on ahead, Chris. I'll give you the floor.
Hit me up, man.
I apologize.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work out, because it seems as though there's a lot of very interesting interpretations, I guess, to get to aliens, and I'm really stuck on because okay, so the story of Noah, the flood.
Right.
If it's copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which we have evidence existed
That was a real
historically,
person.
yeah,
Okay.
and we have evidence of the events. They do match up. Now, the story of Noah, which was written around about 500, 550 BC.
What events line up? What do you mean by that? Like real events in history line up to Gilgamesh?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that there
What
was
do
a
you-
local
okay.
flood in the area.
What's that?
The story of Gilgamesh is reasonable because there are no miraculous claims within it.
Fine.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, going back to a certain period of time, it's not like we've got video evidence, but certainly the evidence does line up. So things like we know that there was a localized flood in the region, which there's no issues with that. But then essentially the story of Noah is copied from that, which is understandable, because the Old Testament of the Bible and those stories in particular were probably written about 500, 550 BC. By an exiled group of people who were trying to basically form their own nationalistic identity. So they did
That's
use
fair.
localized stories. So what I'm saying is that story comes from about 500 BC. So we're going back 2,500 years is when the Old Testament's from, copying older tales from the region. So one can't be something that actually happened, while the other is, if it's copied it from another planet. Unless the
Okay,
exact same thing
floods
happened
do
on another
happen. I'm not saying local floods don't happen, but I don't think there can be a worldwide flood.
Could you tell Chris what you
And
think the
I
flood
don't think
is?
that's necessarily what the story is about in the first place.
Oh, I think it's a love story, but most people hate me for bringing that up.
Noah or Gilgamesh?
Either one.
Yeah, I know what
I
you
think,
mean.
I think Noah is a love story about his wife,
Aw.
but I get shit on pretty deeply for that
I'd
opinion.
love to hear your theory on that. That's interesting.
It's about a wife sticking with a man who's losing his mind.
You are a true romantic
An
artist.
old drunk.
I am deep down. I'm a loving, sweet motherfucker.
That's great. We're tired of hearing about it already. So then,
Write a blog about it.
What did you say, Mama?
Noah was an old drunk.
sure, because vineyard always means making alcohol, whereas the rest of the Bible, it means propagating people. But hey, let's just ignore that.
Wait.
Oh my
He
god.
passed out
Seriously,
naked
Richard,
and
this is
drunk.
it. Why every time I speak to you, you have to, oh my god. You have
I'm picking on
something-
Christians. I'm not picking on you.
No,
Don't take it personal.
Vineyard means where vines are grown.
Christians say ridiculous things. I'm making fun of them.
Okay.
So he passed out off olive vines? Or I don't know.
Well, let's not switch stories too quick. We'll get to that part maybe someday.
No. It's the same story. It's what she's referring to directly.
It is the ending of the story of Noah and the beginning of another story. Yes, it is.
So is Noah and the flood copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh or from another planet?
I think that's only a problem if I had Christian pride, and I don't.
No, I'm asking you directly. I don't give a shit about Christian pride.
No,
What I'm
I
saying
think that story is
planet.
all over the planet. I think that story is all over the planet in many religions, and that's okay with me. In fact, I think it should be. Unless some God is a God yet prejudiced, which makes no sense.
Richard's interpretation is that the flood isn't water. Richard's interpretation that the flood that takes over the planet is us.
Is you, us, people.
We
Well,
are
not
the flood.
water.
That's a very big.
That's his interpretation of it. So when it's the story of the flood wiping out and covering everything and all, we are that.
We're actually doing that, like global warming and what?
I'm sorry. How long did it take for humans to flood the planet?
Yeah, that's why I said it's in prophecy. It's talking about the end of the planet, not the beginning at all.
That doesn't answer my question.
What do you mean? There's like 7.75 billion of us last time I looked. I don't know. There's a bunch.
I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I'm going to stick up the Bible.
You'd be surprised how many atheists stick up the Bible for the Bible when I say this stuff.
The Bible.
Amazing.
That's. I mean, I know that there's all different interpretations, but that's really stretching. That's
Is
it doesn't even it doesn't. Yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely
Why?
using the language.
Because it doesn't imply or infer that.
Could I ask you
anywhere.
some questions?
It's not even poetic.
Yes, and as soon as I finish, it quite literally says that it rained for 40 days, 40 nights. It describes a flood. It's copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is quite literally a flood of water. So
Do you know what fountains of the deep means?
Depends on which interpretation we're talking about. There's the talk that it came through from the ground, and that's where the water came from. Or there's also the canopy theory that I've heard. There's a million different theories, but it is quite literally referring to water.
I'm just talking about the original words,
Okay.
not any church's interpretation or how they rewrote it to match their view of the text. I'm not talking about the NIV or any of them.
Cool. So let's go to the Aramaic.
Let's go to the Sanskrit.
So I'm going to propose the idea here that at the beginning of the lesson is spelled out cryptically. I'll grant you cryptically a way to read the rest of it. Okay, but by necessity, it can't be talking about water from the very beginning of the Bible. It can't be.
Can't be.
Because you can't have a void of a substance. You can't have a void that is a substance
It
simultaneously.
actually describes the waters, though.
And you're going to have a hard time convincing me that some godlike being is super interested in H2O.
You're going to have a real tough time describing what the fuck a void is.
Well, I think a void is a lack of.
Of what?
Of anything. That's what void means.
What example of nothing do we have?
That's beside the point. Theoretically, you understand nothing like you understand infinity.
No, I quite literally do not understand that.
I'm not claiming there is a nothing. I am claiming
you are claiming that water doesn't mean water, but void means void.
You don't get what I'm saying?
No,
it's like
that is my interpretation of what you're saying.
It's like the word infinity. There's no such thing as infinity. It's a concept. We use the word to describe the concept.
Where does infinity come into the play?
Void is the same as that.
How is water different? If void is used figuratively, how can water be used literally?
You're making it literal. I want it to be figurative. You're arguing my case for me.
Right. Accept it. Move on. Richard, finish. Going in circles.
You're the one who wants it to be literal. Don't argue with yourself now.
What is a figurative void?
You can't have an actual void. But you certainly can't have any kind of a void or near a void full of water.
We know that now.
Let's not fight over what the word void means, but accept his definition and move on in the story.
I'm not mad, but I had to storm off.
Okay, that's cool. You do you, man.
That's all I can do.
Okay, so it says void, and the Spirit of God moved upon the waters. Okay, that from what I understand, that's what it actually reads there. All right, but you can't have a void that's filled with waters, even theoretically. So I don't think it's talking about a physical substance, H2O, and I don't know why gods are interested in H2O anyway, any more than anything else. Say, I don't know, carbon. Okay, so it doesn't make why not? God was fluffing the carbon up. You know, whatever.
Yeah, I think that was just a recognition that there seemed to be a lot more water than land by the people who wrote the book.
Yeah, but I think he's looking for the justification of why you think that people are the flood. Why? That's what we're trying to get at here. We're tangenting and getting stuck on the word void.
Okay.
To me, that's
the Hebrew word. Okay, the Hebrew word for water. I just want to double check myself as it's referred to and confirm it's referred to the same way in Genesis 1 and 7 is yin or yang.
Okay.
That's the word for water, and it's used in the same context for both Genesis 1 and Genesis 7 as far as the flood water. It's the water is the same word.
Sure it is. I'm maintaining it is the same word.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to change the definition of it.
But it's clearly the word for water is in H2O.
I understand that.
But
I understand. And the if I talk about the last Super Bowl in the United States, there's also nothing wrong with me saying Team A slaughtered Team B, yet there were no ambulances needed. There's nothing wrong with saying it that way. So, yes, the word is slaughter, but I don't mean that they killed each other.
So what basis are you...
Yeah, but that's using English and I guess modern terminology, whereas...
Right. So let's go back to it and say, okay, in context, is there a continuous, coherent context for the word waters throughout the text? And I'm saying yes, there is.
Okay, I'll go with this.
Okay, so like Jesus walking on the waters is only a declaration of his natural ability to lead people. Like Noah's Ark is raised up on the waters, and I don't think most people would argue with me, Christians definitely elevate the idea of Noah's Ark. Even if it's not historically accurate, it is true to this moment that people elevate Noah's Ark. That's just true.
For the sake of contributing anything, I grew up United Methodist, and Noah was not taught as a particularly significant moment in Christianity.
What about Jesus walking on the waters?
Yes, not part of the Noah story.
Yes, I said where these miracles are described using the word waters, it means people.
So your inference there is that Jesus walked upon the people.
Yeah, he's a natural leader. maybe even crowd surfing. Who knows?
That is not how walked upon the people, I would guess, have been interpreted at any point in human history.
Yeah, I get that. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, it's definitely a stretch for me to accept that at some point.
Oh, you don't have to accept it.
Revelation ever assumed that people walking upon my head meant that they were in some way serving.
Here's something that's also very, very interesting about that word waters as people. Anybody here an airplane pilot?
No.
No, or
I'm
you know an airplane pilot.
Hang on. I am too high for you to change topics that fast. Hang on.
So aircraft pilot are taught to crash into water because it's, softer.
No, they're
But
not.
they're also taught they have to not crash into large crowds that look from the air like water. I just think that's interesting. It's not in the text, but I think it's interesting.
They're not taught to land on water.
Right, so still haven't heard your justification for why humans are the flood.
Yeah, okay, so in a consistent and coherent view within the text, if we replace the word waters with great multitude of people, okay, then what you get is not miracles, but an eventuality of the planet's population and the things they actually do, like covering the mountains. Yeah. In fact, I hear there's a rumor that I can't prove there's a dude in outer space in an international space station. I mean, I can't prove that, but I saw a light thing go by at the right time. So yeah, I think we've covered the mountains. I think that we are destroying the planet. I think there is a whole bunch of us. I think we do elevate those ideas like the Ark, and we do elevate ideas like Jesus. That's true. So when I look at it that way, I don't see magic. I just see eventualities of the people.
So why do you need two of every kind of the animals?
Now you've switched it from the flood to the ark. That's fine.
Oh my God! If you
It's the same fucking thing.
The same thing, the flood.
Change.
Are you?
It's the same thing.
No, I'm not.
Same thing. It's the story of Noah. The story of Noah. It's just two of every animal.
Can somebody build a bloomery to distill the irony?
No. It's fine. I'm just pointing it out that happened. It's fine. Okay.
I think you broke
So
that
we've gone from the waters to the boat, right?
You've got to admit that you did make it sound like you were a little shocked that somebody would.
No. I'm fine.
I'm here every week, and I'm with you every week, Richard. I was shocked at your response.
Not mad, just an admission that that's something you'd already accomplished.
No, I totally did.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now we're talking about the boat, not the waters.
No, I'm
Okay.
talking about both. I'm talking about the legend of Noah.
Yeah, it's all one story. I get that. The story's extremely repetitive. So this is just one more in a long laundry list of stories that are just the same to my mind.
My favorite part of the Noah story is the incest, but that's just me.
That's later on. We'll get to that.
That's just.
They got to get Dad drunk first, then we can get to the incest. Okay.
Hit a beach.
Oh no, tangent. Go back, bring it back. Chris was trying to say something about the boat. Chris was going to say something about the ark. Chris, go on ahead with your ark question.
No, it's very, very clear if the floodwaters are referring to people, and which I was going to get into the word for flood, bull or bule. It's clearly, and the waters is may. It's clearly referring to waters in the language. There's three different words that are referring to it is quite literally referring to water and a flood. But if it was people, why would they need two of every kind on the ark?
To escape the people.
It's quite simply.
It's not two of every kind. First of all,
No,
it's 7 and 2 times 2, which is 4 and 14, not 2.
And I get that. That's fine. But
okay.
Regardless, why would that be needed? It's clearly a copy from the Epic of Gilgamesh. Clearly a copy. It's quite literally almost copied
from other stories. What's wrong with that?
Because once again, if the Noah story happened on another planet, but we have evidence that the Gilgamesh story happened on Earth.
Okay. Are you saying that in the story of Gilgamesh, you actually believe that there was a wooden vessel where they brought on one, at least even one of every animal? You believe that?
That's not what.
That's a historical fact.
Not every animal in the world, no, but
Every animal from that area.
He does have. It's basically with his own farm animals, the animals that he had to
He has a zoo on a boat, and he travels from village to village, displaying his wares for money.
Okay, so if that actually happened and he actually rescued those animals,
Nope, he already had them on a boat. He didn't rescue shit.
Yeah.
Okay, he had them on a boat and they did not drown. Is that fair to say?
Sure.
Okay. Did he have insects? Did he bring insects onto the boat?
Probably not. No.
Well, I'm guessing that insects followed the boat.
So those migrated back in later after the localized flood. Is that how it's historically accurate?
Why? Okay. Let me try to describe my exasperation. Why I'm exasperated. There is no reason to believe that his boat full of his boat that constitutes a floating zoo wouldn't have with it its own insect population. And there's no reason, given a localized flood, that there would be any reason for there to not be insects with him on the boat.
And non-swimming birds.
Did
he have those as well?
Localized floods don't have shit to do with non-swimming birds.
Well, I'm just wondering how the place got repopulated with animals.
I'm someone who is a historian. I will tell you right now. I'll make the claim that the story of Noah is copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Why is that a problem?
Because it's historically impossible.
I don't think it's a problem.
I'm just saying, is it another planet or is it from the Epic of Gilgamesh?
On this planet, it's impossible.
Okay, I'm agreeing with you.
I know.
I don't know if you can tell that.
But what's the significance of a story about an impossibility on any planet, let alone several?
Oh, okay. First, waters doesn't mean H2O. It means a big group of people. Second, Noah is a reference to God in heaven. The ark is a reference to heaven itself.
What does any of this have to do?
I'm trying to answer your questions.
I apologize. It didn't seem like that's where you were headed. I'll let you. I sincerely go ahead.
Okay, so what I see described in a hard measurement of "quote unquote" our heaven, the New Jerusalem, is 12,000 furlongs. Which, if that's and I'm giving it as I'm making it as small as possible. If that is the diameter of the total object, then that's 1,500 miles across, okay? And then it gives a conversion factor in the 3 levels of Noah's Ark, the 3 levels of heaven, and that would make those objects moon and planet-sized objects. Now, it's real easy, actually, if I had objects that big, to take 14 elephants. No problem, 14 giraffe, you're kidding me. Let's just keep going with this.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't think it's talking about a wooden boat made out of a material that has historically never existed here.
Oh no, I think I think the book describes a raft, probably round, built out of.
Yes, it's told that way. I get that.
Built out of reeds. It's certainly not the fucking boat that's 180 miles south of me that has a bow and no means of propulsion.
You're above Kentucky? Is that the boat you're talking about? The Ken Ham boat? That's funny.
I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so yeah.
Rocking. Awesome.
And I attended IU, so it's Kentucky.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm not going to... Okay, I get it.
It's Kentucky before the fucking boat.
Yeah, I don't think it's talking about water flood, because there cannot have been one. The mass people are assuming the story is describing. That kind of massive water just can't happen.
I don't know how you can describe the human population as a flood at that time based on anything we know about the human population.
Stop doing that. Get out of the history lesson. Stop it.
Okay. So what great insight did the people who were exiled, the Hebrews who were exiled in about 500, 550 BC,
What?
have. I mean, it's the Bible is basically a retelling. It's a national. It's how they're raising their nationalistic identity and trying to unify everyone. That's where the Bible comes from. It's trying to unify the Hebrew people to rise up against and go back and claim their original homeland. And that's where the stories come from. And it takes bits and pieces. So I agree that there was no global flood on Earth. I agree that the story of Noah, or I would say the story of Noah, didn't happen on this Earth or any Earth. It's a copy, and it's a written down version of another tale that was a popular tale that they used to basically nationalize themselves in order to unite. It's like people do now. It's saying, it's like the Nazis did with Aryan legends. They retake stories from here, stories from there, and make them heroes about their own people. So we know that Moses didn't exist. We know that Abraham didn't exist. We know that there was no Exodus out of Egypt. These are things we can prove. In fact, it's probably the only things that we can say from the Old Testament. We know that there was the exile, and we know that was probably written in a contemporary manner, because we can actually verify a lot of that, and we can verify that people like David, Saul, existed. Solomon, not Saul.
So a couple hundred Canaanites went into Egypt and soon got kicked out.
Is that true?
That's actually true.
Where did that happen?
I just told you. A couple of Canaanites went over to Egypt and got kicked out in short order.
Oh, so that happened on this planet?
Yeah.
Just making sure it's not a metaphor.
He's talking about real history. I'm staying with the topic.
I'm just asking, dude. There's been a lot of.
Where's your info?
What's that?
I don't know which parts of the Bible are about this planet and which parts are about the other planets.
Okay, let me just summate this super easy and quick.
So we've got
or not.
Where are you talking about that? Where's the evidence for the hundreds of Canaanites that went and got kicked out?
There was a couple hundred Canaanites that went into Egypt. They didn't get to stay very long, and many scholars think that is the quote-unquote Exodus. Okay? But it wasn't millions of them. They weren't huge amounts of them, slaves in Egypt, building pyramids and all that crap. Okay, that's just
more than
that part's that's expounding on the original idea.
Yeah, that's a Christian kind of jumping through hoops to try and explain something. Answer though. That's and I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. I'm saying from a historical perspective, there's no evidence that any of it ever happened. The Egyptians. I mean, we've got so many.
I'm not defending the historicity of it. I'm just not. I don't think it happened historically. I'm trying to address the things you're saying as you say them.
Yeah, but that's the point I'm making. It's these stories were taken in order to put a national identity behind the exiled Hebrews who wanted to go back and claim their homeland.
That's great. I don't care what they used it for.
Richard, I insist that you accept that you have both said that what you've said isn't necessarily true, and
I have to say that because I'm
and
human.
actually happened.
I am saying that it's more plausible to believe.
That is not how you put it, but I'm willing to accept this change.
Okay. I'm saying versus magic, it's more possible, physically possible, that there has been another Earth, and we only know about it from this ancient story, and that story was given to people all over the planet to tell us about our eventual end.
Richard.
Okay.
Richard.
Rather compared to magic. That's what I'm saying.
Richard, have you ever studied statistics?
Can we talk about what Chris already said before we move to that?
Why did you sidestep that? Why do you always do that? When somebody
Why do you always say I always do something when I do it once?
You did make a claim. I would like to hear an answer as well. Mostly because you suddenly became very uncomfortable.
I'm not suddenly uncomfortable. I'm trying to address these things one at a time as they come, if that's okay.
Well, I appreciate your position, but your response to this affects your response to the previous.
I'm a little, okay. I'm starting to think you're smarter than me. That's okay with me. I'm just having trouble keeping up with what you just said.
Fucking do that, dude.
Okay, so
I am not.
All right. it is totally true that people in the past have used their religious stories to justify things that they have actually done. I totally agree. But there's no point in justifying things that didn't happen. For instance, wiping out entire people who didn't get wiped out. The Jews simply didn't wipe those people out. They don't need to call them names. They don't need to justify having wiped them out in the story, since they never wiped them out.
By that logic, they don't need to claim that their God told them to do it.
Right. That's correct.
Then at what point are you delineating between what is metaphorical, what is not, what actually happened, and where it happened?
Okay,
because you're claiming all four of those things given certain circumstances, and I will admit that's why I don't want you to make any claims about my intellect being superior to yours, because mostly I'm really fucking high and pretty fucking drunk, and I don't understand
Maybe it's helping.
what you just said.
Okay. All right. So context is my point here.
That's what I was trying to apply context. That's why I got the spins and almost threw up.
Well, I can't imagine how you could discern what context I'm describing with this amount of conversation. I don't know how you would do that. I don't think I'd be capable.
I think the drama is, I think we're bouncing between two conversations.
That quite literally describes exactly what I just said.
Okay.
Given what has been already said, there is no establishment of sufficient context for what you have said to make sense.
Well, I think MathPig took a stab at it. That what I'm trying to espouse here, yes, him in that direction, that guy over there.
I'm totally nailing this after 5 years.
Right.
In saying that, I'm directly above you on the screen. Artie, point up. I'm directly actually above you on the screen that everyone else is seeing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you fucked it up.
So
there you go. There you go.
Yeah. So, weirdly, in mirrors, up are still up. That's amazing. Okay.
Oh, my turn, I've got cripple over me, and I would like to be fingered.
I don't know. I've never asked him.
Well, you don't have to ask him; he'll tell you.
Okay. So what? He'll volunteer that information. So what?
He's all about digital stimulation.
What I'm suggesting is there is a more consistent context that doesn't require ignoring parts of the text, where it's saying cryptically using some made up history, using some real history.
Before the comma and after the comma, can we just go back that fucking far in what you just said?
I don't know what's wrong with that. What I just said.
That's why I want to roll the tape back.
Chris, go.
So I guess the point that I'm making is we understand the historical context of why these biblical stories exist. We understand the circumstances, and we understand where they got the stories from. What I'm saying is where we can actually show that it's a retelling of a historical event. I think it's a stretch to then say that it's more plausible it happened on another planet. No, because it's a retell. We understand from a historical narrative why it happened. We understand from a historical narrative why these stories exist. We actually know that it was in order for a nationalistic storytelling, in order to raise up and basically unite the 12 tribes into the Hebrews.
Statistics to calculate the probability of those events having taken place.
Yeah, that works just fine.
Because there are variables that we're aware of that we can apply to formulas.
Yeah.
So but when you insinuate that one thing is more likely than another, but you don't have a variable to account for that thing, like a god, then you can't fucking claim it.
You particular two gentlemen who have argued these points many times. If I asked you individually, sure, how much of the Bible stories are historic?
I couldn't give you an exact percentage, but I can probably run through it. I can probably run through and we can discuss individually which ones are historic, which ones are historic retellings, which ones there's limited evidence for. It's.
Well, how about Tyre?
My knee jerk.
Did Tyre get wiped off the map? Did that happen?
My knee-jerk reaction is less than 20% of the Bible is historically accurate.
Okay, so when your explanation of this is how these people justify their present situation and past existence, then that's fine for the actual 20%. It's not fine for the greater 80%, however. You don't need to justify things that didn't happen.
Welcome, Badger.
No one's justifying anything. The point is, we understand. What I'm saying is, we understand why these stories exist. We understand the context in which they were written. We understand the time in which they were written. They were written in order to basically build up a nationalistic, united Hebrew or Israelite identity.
I'm going to keep track. I'm going to start keeping track of how many times you've used exactly that phrase.
It's because it's the actual.
Look, we heard you.
Okay, so, but
Everybody
that's what I'm
heard
saying.
you.
Your claim is that it's more likely that it was aliens, or that
No.
sorry, not aliens, but it happened on another planet. Okay,
Could you properly quote me? Can you do that?
Okay, so what are you claiming then? If that's not what you.
I said rather than magic, it's plausible in reality. Just didn't happen on this planet.
You said more plausible.
Okay, well, I will say that it is a hell of a lot more plausible. It was just basically a retelling of a nationalist. It's what I've said multiple times.
Yeah, except for the parts that are not historically happened. They did not happen here. Tyre did not get wiped off. I mean, you know all these.
Okay.
You've argued these.
Hercules didn't exist as well, but it was a great nationalistic story.
Exactly.
Is it fair to summarize this as the Jeffersonian Bible plus aliens? I apologize, Richard.
I don't know.
I'm specifically not asking
Maybe.
because I don't think you would probably agree with that assessment. But to me, it is taking everything in the Bible as true, minus the miracles, plus alien.
That's not fair. He cut parts out. I'm including the entire text.
I appreciate that you have an opinion that's certainly valid, but I was specifically asking everyone else. Not to insult you, I just want to see if I'm the only one that feels the way that I feel. To me, it really feels like that. I don't mean that to be insulting. I'm legitimately trying to use that as an explanation for how I'm perceiving what's been presented. Your silence is fucking crushing my balls.
I thought you just told me to shut up. You were asking everybody else, so I shut up.
I'm sorry. Again, there are 4 other people in here, Richard.
I like Richard an awful lot. Richard, I do this show every week with him, but I am lost tonight. The crazy is overflowing tonight. I'm sorry.
I am not, Richard. I absolutely, sincerely am not trying to insult you by asking that question. I am genuinely trying to assess if my perception of what's happening is remotely similar to what other people involved in this conversation are perceiving.
You asking them or me?
Them.
It sounds like you're asking both simultaneously. Okay.
I am asking them.
I'll let someone else answer because
I've completely lost track.
I understand because I've been through all of this with Richard, but there's been so many tangents and jumping and diversions and avoidance and everything tonight that it's been story after story, and I am lost. That's the truth. I'm lost. I'm here every week and I'm fucking lost.
Okay, Badger, are you pooping or are you there?
Oh, I'm here. I've just got absolutely no idea what's happening.
Okay.
Dave, Dave has been very quiet, right?
Somebody snuck acid into your Horlicks.
No.
And this is the net result.
No. This pasty white fucker with the Indiana flag and the quilt that his mom made for him.
And the giraffe with the tie.
That's a nice fucking tie, though. That's the
Nice giraffe.
it's the original Jerry Garcia fish tie, for those that are curious. I'm lost as fuck, and I feel like I'm keeping up. And Chris, I know Chris is giving it every bit, maybe better attention than I am, because I know I'm fucked up, and I can't tell that he might be.
Chris is the other side of you.
I get the point that Richard's making. I understand what Richard's saying.
But
So,
Richard, I am sincerely making every effort.
Artemis, if I could answer your question,
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so basically yes, but not discluding any parts of it. That it's being told to us by advanced human beings who do not live here. What?
Discluding isn't a word, but what did you mean when you used it?
Discluding is a word, and I mean I'm not dismissing any of the miracles. I just don't think they're magic.
Right, it is a word. Hang on.
Yeah.
Third person.
Okay, so I get what
He
you're
thinks they are
saying.
the technology of alien overlords.
Basically, Dave is right. Yeah, basically.
Excluding third.
Chris, go on ahead, Chris.
Gotcha. All right.
Right.
So the question is then, did it happen on this planet with aliens, or did it happen on another planet?
I'm sorry. Artemis was talking and pointing and making fast movements, and I missed part of what you said, sir.
So my question would be, is it, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around what your claim is. Are you saying that it's more likely that aliens intervened here on Earth, or that it happened on another planet, or could it go both ways?
To summate that as best I can, human nature dictates that we will develop in technology a certain way and get to a certain point on the planet, right? And then because we're about to unknowingly kill ourselves off, our ancient ancestors who told us about their intervention show up and intervene.
Okay, so these is the prophecy. Is it divine? Is it spiritual in nature, or is it just guessing based on statistics what would likely happen?
Well, I haven't studied any statistics. I'm not educated that way, but I see that as
is it prophetic?
Yeah, it's talking about their intervention. It's not magic. It's intelligent people doing stuff.
So do they have the ability to travel through time?
I think they're about a Kardashev class 4 civilization. So yes, something like that.
Okay. So they've actually already observed. So it's not necessarily prophetic. They've already observed what will happen.
Oh yeah, I don't even think they would need to be able to do that and look at the future of this Earth because they already know what happened on the last one.
Okay, because if
So
it's
it's not
prophetic
prophetic,
and they're
it's
describing,
calculated.
if they're describing future events, then we are talking magic, because prophecy and being able to divine the future is certainly magic.
Could you raise your right hand?
Yeah, I couldn't. I know that would be a prophecy. I get that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is,
It's an intelligent intervention. It's not to us. It's prophecy. To
But
them,
if
it's interference.
Actually, that's a quest.
But if you had said, I'm going to prophesy, you raise your right hand, ask me to raise my right hand, I don't, then it hasn't happened. But what I'm saying is,
Right.
Okay, what you're getting into is
It's more like this. I'm going to raise my right hand. There, I did it. That's magic.
I think it's very, very, very different when it's something you have a direct control over. So that brings me to a point. Do the aliens? I assume you're talking about the Elohim. Is that correct?
There's lots of names for the same group, and I don't. That's one of them.
Elohim.
Yeah.
Elohim. So in the original Hebrew text of the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The name for God is Elohim, which directly translates to those who came from the sky.
Right.
Which is it's something that's used a lot in ancient alien talk. Okay, so are they intervening to ensure that we destroy ourselves?
No, to make sure we don't.
Okay, so in that case, it's different to the prophecy of I'm going to raise my right hand. Look, there, I did it. It's so that's a different. That's directly. I made that prophecy, then I directly did it, so I had direct control over it.
Right.
What we're talking about is, so even if you go back to this is the prophecy from the alien overlords, it's still divining, it's still magic, so it still actually falls under that same magical blanket. So regardless, you're talking magic.
I'm missing what's magical about it.
Well, if they're predicting the
Can
future.
I interject
No,
for a
no,
second?
you can control yourself. It's not prophecy when you say something and then you do it. They're saying something which they're going to do. There's no magic in it.
So they're going to wipe out the human
My
race.
internet dead.
I don't know why you're saying wipe out the human race, but okay, if they chose to and then they did it, it's not prophetic except to us.
To whom else? would it be
Badger wants to
prophetic?
say something before you, Artie. Badger's only come in. He hasn't got a chance yet. Then he's probably going ahead, Badger.
Yeah, I'll keep going.
What was I going to say? Right. If I have understood the distinction, let me just read the name. If I've understood the distinction Richard is making correctly, it's not prophetic in the sense that it's achieved by supernatural methods. It's probabilistically determined in the sense that an advanced civilization has both seen it happen previously and is predicting through some possibly technological computation that it is likely to happen again. Is that correct?
And then on top of that, they interfere, making the rest of it happen.
Right, okay, that's just the distinction I wanted to try and clarify.
Boom. Dave, have you anything to add?
No, just the exact same conversation we had the other day when I picked him up on prophecy.
Yeah.
At least I'm consistent.
It would help if you said that it wasn't prophecy.
Dude, how many times do I have to say no magic?
What is the word prophecy has meaning?
The word prophecy, not magic.
Prophecy. Okay, it's just like when you have a child and you're teaching your child things, and say, okay, the first time you kiss somebody, it's going to be like this. And to the kid, it's like mind-blowing information, but to you, it's like blah 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 blah.
Right. That's
See,
not
to you,
actual-
it's just hold on. To you, it's just matter-of-fact stuff. To them, it's prophecy.
No, it fucking isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, I did not think my parents were fucking prophetic for predicting that I was going to have a sex life.
We've said this over and over
The
again,
first time
Richard. Me and
one of
Dave
your
have
parents
said this
told
over
you
and over
about
again.
Something sexual. Tell me
Neither
that
of
you
my
were just like,
parents
oh yeah,
ever
sure, of
told me
course.
anything about sex, and porn was not magic.
Using the
I'm
word
not-
prophecy and things
I'm
like that
not
has a
saying
context
you're
behind it.
magic. You're agreeing with me.
Calling prophecy something I see as magic.
No, you're assigning magic to prophecy. I'm saying
Yeah.
it's just people interfering. Dude, keep your magic. I don't need it.
Oh my god!
I
Right,
just wanna-
right.
just wanna add that-
Have we any I've got a couple of questions that popped up from the chat. We're going to go through that.
Hey,
And
Chris, unmute yourself.
no,
God damn it, unmute yourself, you prick. Do it. Do it.
This is the most fun I've had in such a long time.
This is why we talk to Richard.
Fuck you, Chris.
Oh dear. Okay. Oh man.
Everyone here should come on my channel for chats.
Richard, are you free? Badger's free.
Man, my taint feels so strained right now.
Oh. Right, questions from the chat. Questions from the chat. Okay. Right, why is Enoch not in the Bible, Richard?
It is in the Ethiopian canon and probably could be. I think it's viewed generally as another book of Revelation. Why put it there?
There's nothing better than Ethiopian Christians as far as I'm
I just said hi in the group chat and I wondered if anybody wanted to have a chat, and now look what's happened.
Hector, you know I want to talk to you.
Another question which I think is very good. Richard, if this is a cycle, is there a way to break the cycle?
Break the cycle. Why would you want to? It increases love in the universe experientially in the count of humans.
No, that's
Because
fucking.
I don't want the human race to be wiped out.
What's that?
Because I don't want the human race to be wiped out.
We
What do you
can't
mean
even
wiped out? Why do you keep saying that? There's
we
nothing
can't even
about
get
that in the
people to stay
story.
home
Richard, they're
because
coming.
they
They're coming to the planet's going to be destroyed. They're going to take all the water off it. They're going to take all the metals off it.
there's
They're
a
going to
whole
arrive
bunch
and
of
bust.
us,
No,
and
this is
the
your
greatest
words.
percentage
They're
of
going to
us
arrive. I'm going to
by a
fucking kick
lot.
you. I'll
The
kick
rest-
you too. There you go. Right, they're going to arrive, bust down our doors, and come in and separate us like animals, measure us with rope, and then after a wee while put us back to our family again, and then the planet's going to blow up.
Pretty much it. That's pretty much it.
Wait.
Yeah.
The only reason they would measure us is if they were going to fucking eat us.
Have any of you fuckers ever seen the movie Ice Pirates?
You guys are all disgusting. I
Right.
don't know what you're talking about.
Moving on to the next question. Another question. Is it possible that Genesis didn't pull directly from the later Babylonian edition of the Epic of Gilgamesh than everyone knows, but an earlier version? Or from one of the more earlier sources like the Epic of Gilgamesh pulled from the Epic of Artoritus?
It's possible.
Right, I'm post-apocalyptic now. I'm ready.
Awesome. Is it possible? I mean, of course that sort of thing is possible. I mean, and that might be help more people understand what I'm trying to say. That the age of the story would only be a point of contention, and the origination of the story would only be a point of contention in tribal pride within a religious group. So when you say, oh, you've dismissed 99.9% of gods, why not go one more? I'm like, no, I haven't. You are falsely presenting my position.
So
I think there is literally one God who talked to everybody.
Then what people have said about you is absolutely correct. You said you think there's one God, which means
Right.
you eliminated all other gods, which
No,
is
there
what
are
other people have told you
gods.
you've done.
Artemis, you don't get it. There are no other gods. Just lots of names.
See, again, Richard, this is boiling down to the point that me and Dave keep saying to you. The words that you use when you're describing your point that you want people not to put in the Christian terms, you're using the Christian words. So by using all these
I'm
words...
usually talking to Christians. What do you want me to do?
No, as much as you don't want to be, apparently, you're a fucking Christian, dude. It's not a bad thing to. It's not a bad thing to accept. You just believe that you believe you use the Bible both literally and figuratively to
So do you.
describe something that isn't in the Bible in any measure except through an interpretation that I think it's fair to say most of us have never heard before, given the
me too.
confusion surrounding what you've said.
But he has
Fair
his own
enough.
divine revelation to give him that interpretation.
I can't tell you how proud of myself I am for having gotten all of that bullshit out of my face without slurring or stuttering.
That was awesome. That was.
Really
Good job.
fucking proud of me.
Chris, have you anything that you'd like to add before I go and jump off the bridge?
So much.
Can I take the bridge? I'll meet you at it.
Chris, you said sometime you'd let me on your show. We could do our own on this sometime if you like. There's certainly not enough time tonight.
No. Let's have let's organise. We'll take up a moderated chat on my channel. As soon as I saw the Demolished Doctor, I realised who you were, and I apologise I didn't put two and two together at the start.
Oh, good.
God damn it, Duke. That was not the time.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting conversation. We'll just let you two roll. Maybe have Artie in the background just laughing. That'd be hilarious.
Get on my fucking phone. Get me on.
I'll moderate if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you want to, I'm happy to have because I think there's a lot of conversation to be had. I think that I understand what you're saying. I just think you're
Totally wrong.
completely wrong, and I think you've completely misinterpreted. And I'm prepared to have that conversation with you and explain. And I guess I have explained some of it to you as far as the nationalistic, the origins of the Bible, things like those. But I can also do this with an understanding of. I have studied ufology. I have studied the ancient aliens. I do understand, like the Elohim, the Tower of Babel, things like that. So I get a lot of the, I guess a lot of the explanations for that in the ancient alien side of things. But the actual history and the evidence points to something completely different. So I'm prepared to. I'd like to have that conversation with you because I think that I don't think you can have it both ways.
Right on. I don't think you can have it both ways either.
Richard, I'm sorry. I've already suggested that a little help from Mother Nature and some beer would be a great contribution to what I think is I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, and I hope nothing I've said has offended you
No.
any more than anything you've said has offended me. But I'm really looking forward to any.
Glad to know I offended you. I'm sorry.
Badger, if you can
No,
save
actually, by
yourself.
inference, you're saying that I have actually offended you.
No, you haven't. You really haven't. I'm fine. Thank you.
Well, you haven't offended me, and that's why I said
good.
what I did.
Okay, cool.
Badger, have you
Atheist-
anything to
Atheist
add?
Pastor, you used the word conversation 4 times and the word debate once. So I've got a 4-to-1 ratio there. So is it okay if we just have the conversation? And I don't really like debates.
I'd rather have the conversation.
Right on.
Great. Probably a moderated conversation so we can both get our points across. I don't think we necessarily need to have a debate, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
Sweet.
Badger, have you anything to add?
I only debate on. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. I only debate on Star Wars these days, and I always win.
And Disney is awful, yes?
Exactly. That's my main position.
Perfect. Well, everybody, I want to say thank you all for coming. I really appreciate this. Was a lot of fun tonight, even though my brain hurts at the end. No, I'm above you.
Did we make the end of the list?
Yeah, of the questions.
Wait.
No,
is
I
Richard
didn't
on
ask
top of
yours
me
because
again?
you're here, Dave, and you can ask it yourself.
Is Richard on top of me? I'm trying to do.
Richard is above above the giraffe. I'm going out. There you go. That's you.
There you go.
There you go, Richard.
Dave, ask your question.
Fluid.
Dave, do you remember your question?
Was that the full list?
The next one was your question, and you're here. I don't need to ask it.
Was that the
No, I'm going back to my priorities.
Oh, that the question in chat. Oh, is Noah God?
Yes, I believe that, like several names in the Bible, Noah is a reference to God.
The name is a reference, or the character described as Noah is a reference to God, or the name is a reference to God.
Both.
That's fucking god damn it.
It's just going to get worse. Artie, I'll set you up with Richard. You can have a great fun. Badger, I think, is
so
maybe in the mood
The
for a
word
conversation.
Noah means
Everybody go to
drawing
Badger's
out,
channel.
As in the one who does the drawing out, not the one who was drawn out. Which is why he owns the boat.
Oh my
Which is
God.
why it has 3 levels.
I'm done.
Which is why it has specific measurements.
I'm done.
Because all of that's describing heaven.
I'm done. I'm
All
done.
the dimensions of a boat.
Everybody.
I think we all smell
You are
it.
not going to argue for the existence of that boat.
I
Tell
think
me
we
you
all-
are.
I'm definitely not going to argue for the existence of the boat.
He's left. We're all done. Everybody, thanks for coming.
You know what smells more like me being right than me being right?
You know, atheist pastor, you know the boat cannot be built, would not float, would not support those animals, cannot be those dimensions.
No,
you know that, right?
No argument from me on that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Great.
But
Didn't
I
exist.
know that. I know that. You know that. The,
Didn't exist,
People,
yeah.
The people who were living in the desert in 500 BC may not have known that.
Oh, wait. Let's go back to Gilgamesh.
I've got a whole video on my channel
Gilgamesh
about how
doesn't
that's
do
the
the,
case that you should watch,
Gilgamesh
by the
doesn't
way.
do
It's
the
called Noah's Ark Makes No Sense. It's on the Bad Temper YouTube.
I think
I'm going to go and watch that. You know what? I'm going to go and watch that.